those that came last year, they might have seen this slide before. I'll just sort of give an update on where we are in terms of progress. The big graph that you can see there at the top is plan to get to net zero. So the dark blue bars are the targets we set ourselves, and the light blue bars are what we actually delivered. And this is based on ERIC data. The ERIC data collection is now complete, and we're just going through the stages where we're checking that ERIC data for obvious errors. And so we're literally doing that this minute. We're expecting the ERIC data for 24-25 to be out maybe at the beginning of October. So unfortunately, can't talk about the fabulous work that we've done. But what I can tell you is it looks like we'll be very close to our target for this year if the anomalies that we've identified are anomalies and not additional waste. So that's fantastic. And this chart was developed, the idea of the plan was to reduce our carbon from waste by 50% from 2023 to 2026, which is a tough ask. And that was all going to be done by improving our knowledge of waste, segregating better, having waste managers for a start, and having them properly trained. And I can say in the last year, we've had more than 100 waste managers attend the course that we worked together with CIWM and delivered 100 people in those cohorts. So now we have gobby waste managers up and down the country that sort of know what they're talking about, which is fantastic. The other interesting thing is on the bottom left-hand corner of that chart, you can see there with the yellow, orange and grey bars. Quite interesting. In the last 3 years, the amount of activity in the NHS has gone steadily upwards. In fact, some years it's been double normal. Whereas if you look there, you can see the overall amount of clinical waste, which is what those are, is actually reduced. And that's because we're segregating our waste better. We set a target of 20-20-60 back in 2023, which is a generic target for most healthcare sites to attain. And that 20-20-60 is 20% yellow, high temperature incineration waste, 20% orange, which is infection waste, and 60% offensive waste, which is target strike bags. So we're well on the road to doing that. And in fact, the figures that I've seen for this year give me even more encouragement. And the people that aren't attaining that are actually starting to become outstanding, but not in the way that they would want. And we're able to target our management effort into working with those guys, as well as getting waste managers up and down the country to help and support each other. Because what we found is in one area, you might find somebody that's cracked the problem, another area, somebody's really struggling, put them together and voila, we're able to improve things. So there's a couple of things that we need to work on. In fact, when we launched the HTM back in 2023, on my way to the podium, the head of the Environment Agency grabbed me by the sleeve and said, "Liam, you've got to stop burning waste." And I was like, yeah, I know. We've got it all planned out. And actually, we're rapidly approaching the point where we've segregated all we can, or best we can, and now we have to stop burning waste. So what does that mean? That means we have to stop burning clinical waste. And people will say, well, we're only burning one stream. It's not quite true. Infectious clinical waste is generally heat treated, normally a steam sterilisation, or maybe another autoclave process. It could be microwave. And then afterwards, that flock that comes from that is sent from energy from waste plants to be burnt. And so we have to stop that. So in the future, in the coming months, we're going to spend, in the coming years, more and more time looking to recover the materials that we've used in healthcare. And that's going to be the challenge for us going forward. And Samantha will be quite keen to see on the right-hand side, the yellow graph, one of the areas of waste that is going up is food waste. So if you look in the ERIC data, steadily food waste is going up year on year. And that's not because we got worse at dealing with food waste, it's because we started measuring it. Up and down the country now, people have been stopped and putting food waste into macerators into the sewers, and actually this is a result of us measuring it. And I think when you hear both from Max and from Samantha, the work that they've been doing there, you can see that whilst the numbers look like they're going up, the amount of food waste actually per patient is going down. And there's been some fantastic successes out there. This is a trust in the Midlands, not far from here. And 2 years ago, they were all basically orange bags, as you can see to the left of this graph. And they realised they had a massive problem. And the Assistant Director of Sustainability there actually put waste management on their risk register and actually scored the risk so high that it made its way onto the public register. And what that did was it made the trust do something. And so they invested in some people and some initiatives to actually drive the improvement in their clinical waste streams. And as you can see to the right-hand side, there in 2 years they've achieved the 2020-60 target. And actually they're starting to really motor and starting to look more and more and more detailed into the waste streams that's coming out, which is where we need to be going into the future. So what's next? These are two excerpts from the HTM and also the clinical waste strategy that we laid out in 2023. And the target that we've got to reach first is cutting the carbon from our waste in half by 2026. And as I showed in the earlier slides, we are well on the road to doing that. I think next year we will have achieved that. Hopefully, not only will we have achieved that, we will have also eliminated landfill waste. Less than 5% of our waste currently goes to landfill, which is a massive drop from where it was a couple of years ago. It's a fantastic result. So the next target to look at is 2028. And you can see it's an 80% reduction in carbon emissions. It's not long to achieve that, and that's going to be primarily on how waste is treated and what we do with it afterwards. Within the strategy, there's a document that goes alongside this called a waste planning tool, and that waste planning tool gives the carbon factors for each of the waste streams. And so, for instance, it's round numbers, about 900 kilos per tonne for high temperature incineration waste in carbon, 450 for orange bag or infectious waste, and 21 kilos per tonne for waste that goes to energy from waste plants, which a lot of offensive waste goes to, amongst other things, including their domestic waste. And that seems to be a route that it's settled down and is working well. I'll bring you back to the conversation I had with the Environment Agency, which is Liam, stop burning waste. So we're going to have to find alternative routes for the energy from waste that we're sending currently. And that's going to be the challenge for us going forward, and that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. I'm quite confident that we're going to do this, and actually there's some figures that haven't really been published, and I thought I'd just put this up. To get us to where we are now in the last 3 years, because we've improved the amount of segregation that we're doing, and we're much more aligned to the 2020-60 targets, not only is the overall amount of clinical waste dropped down, but proportionate to the amount of waste that's being produced per patient is going down, clinical waste that is. We've actually had a cost avoidance of around about £22 million, and that's up to 23, 24, and it will be significantly more next year. But this is the part of the curve where there is real savings to be had. So in terms of segregation, as we move forward, that's going to become more difficult to deliver. But we've made a great start, and it's something I thought I'd share with everybody. So what are the targets? So this is all these views are from the waste dashboard that we've produced. It's available to everybody in NHS. If you don't have access to it, let me know, and we'll try and get you access. It does require access through Power BI, but a lot of people have it. But what it allows anybody to do is to dial up where we are nationally, regionally, at a trust, and down to a site level in terms of all the waste that we report through ERIC. So what you can see here is a chart of people that are not segregating any of their waste. It's all going as high temperature waste. The beauty of these charts so we can identify who they are, how much carbon is to be saved, and probably could calculate how much money is to be saved as well. Now, some of the people on this list have their own incinerators on site, and the discussion I've had with them is that it's good to have your own incinerator on site, NHS owned, fantastic, but you should still be segregating your waste. And the reason for that is if there was this catastrophic failure of the plant, you would need to be able to send the waste off site correctly consigned. And if you're not segregating any of your waste, you can't do that. The next tranche of people, these are people who are predominantly sending their waste away as orange bag waste. And actually, again, you can see in terms of the number of trusts up and down the country, there's relatively few. And that's good news for me because there's only one of me. And so we're able to target the help and support that we need to these people to help them move forward. And this last one is landfill. My boss is Fiona Daly, and she's absolutely fixated in eliminating landfill. We said, 10, 15 years ago, we were going to eliminate landfill in the NHS. We're below 5%, but anybody that's landfilling waste at the moment, please stop. And I understand, some of the people are stuck in contracts at the moment, which means that the providers that they're using can take it to landfill. I'd have a polite discussion with them and tell them what the future is likely to be. Reuse schemes. Another way of, the best way of dealing with waste is not to have it in the first place. And I think there's a number of reuse schemes that have been fantastically subscribed up and down the country. So for instance, walking aids. There's a national walking aid reuse programme. In the past, certainly in the trust that I've worked in, we ended up putting walking aids either in the skip when they've been returned, or we used to send them abroad to people less fortunate than ourselves. But actually the reuse programme realised that the inspection regime on handing out brand new walking aids is identical to the one that you do for used walking aids. And so now these programmes are well developed, well documented, they're out there. And when you look at ERIC from last year, I haven't got the figures for this year, this part of the ERIC I haven't seen yet, you can see that very few trusts are actually operating robust reuse schemes, and there's money to be had or saved in those schemes. And again, when you extrapolate it out, you're looking at about £6 million a year. It's probably near 8 now. So there are very well documented case studies up and down the country for trusts that have got reuse schemes in place. If you don't have one, have a look, see if you can join in with some other people, and if you need any further help, you can always give me a shout. So, the exciting future. There's a massive amount of work going on at the moment from government through Department of Health and Social Security, NHS England, trusts, academia and industry in terms of developing a circular economy from waste in particular. And it's really exciting areas. And when we started off thinking about this was the 80% of my Pareto curve that you saw at the start, which was going to be extremely difficult, and it will be challenging. But I'm confident now that the people that we've got working on this will come up with the solutions, and they are coming thick and fast as we speak. So Design for Life has been running about a year, and it involves all sorts of people up and down the country. When they launched the Design for Life, I was actually invited along to that launch, and I actually got 3 minutes with Baroness Merron to talk about, as an NHS, what we were doing and what we hope to do in the future. And that resulted in a number of other visits up to the House of Lords with a number of very, very highly paid, motivated people talking about the circular economy and how we can develop it going forward. So there's real impetus coming behind this at the moment. It's quite interesting. They call it Design for Life. I actually think it should be called Design for Life and Afterlife, because what they're trying to do is design products that can be reused, repurposed, remade, remanufactured, whatever. I think there's 10 re's that they use. But I also think we need to think about when things are manufactured, how can they be taken apart if they need to be? How do we get them back into their constituent parts? And how do we turn them back into products? Because that's what the circular economy means, is actually turning it back into physical products. That will mean that we need to have medical and clinical adoption. So, we need to carry medical and clinical people with us, and within the group from Design for Life, there's plenty of those as well, so that we don't end up with roadblocks where we've dreamt up fabulous solutions that the medical and the clinical guys say we're not prepared to use them. Resource logistics, and then this second thing, resource preparation. I think I've seen more recycling programs and reuse programs die because we haven't paid sufficient attention to this. Even the programs pilots that have been really successful and they started, when they try to scale them up, fall over. One of the ones that's really struggling, for instance, is the inhaler reuse program. Seems really simple to go and get inhalers back. There are a number of different inhalers. They don't all do the same thing. There's very few people up and down the country that will recycle them, and it gets harder and harder and harder. And I think, when we're putting or dreaming up these programs, we need to be thinking about making the program, seeing it works, seeing that the various elements and components work, but thinking about how's this going to look on a much larger scale. Because if it doesn't operate on a large scale, we don't bring industry with us. They can't make any money out of it. They won't do it. And then resource loop. When I started this, I was definitely thinking about clinical waste, the 3 clinical waste streams, and what the mix should look like. And I said to people at the time, we didn't have sufficient waste managers, and they weren't trained. I think when we started, there were less than 30% of trusts had waste managers. Less than 30% of those had actually any training. And so that's changed now. And what we said we would do is we would all be waste managers up until 2026, and then we'd start mutating into resource managers. And then what that means is that the waste managers will be replaced by German Shepherd dogs who sit next to a disposal bin, and when you open it, they bite you. And the resource managers are there to figure out how we take whatever's coming out of the back of our hospitals and put it into the various waste streams for it to be reused thereafter. And that's the challenge going forward. Right on cue, there's the Rees. On the left-hand side is the usual hierarchy that you've seen for waste management. I stole this from my bosses at the CIWM, and on the right-hand side is if you have a true circular economy, it needs to look like that. So, is this all pie in the sky? No. What you can see here on the left-hand side is a shot of Arctic, which is being filled up at SRCL's Stericycles plant at Knowsley. And this waste is ex-Sharps waste. It's been treated in their autoclave. They've shredded it afterwards, and that's what's created the flock. And then what happens with the flock? The left-hand one is a Sharps-based flock. Welcome, Max. We're so pleased that you're here. The left-hand one is a Sharps-based flock. The right-hand one is an orange or infectious waste flock. You can see they're very different. And offensive waste flock looks like the one on the right. So there are very different materials in those flocks. So what's happening is that this flock is being collected and taken to a company in Scotland called Impact Recycling, and they have a really cool technology. And I went up to see this. These are the photographs I took on that day. So what they're doing is taking the flock, they separate it out. They're using a technology similar that they're using petrochemical industries, where they've float stuff off, so plastics go to the top, the metals go to the bottom, and everything in between. They sort these out, and they get the flock smaller and smaller and smaller as it goes through the process. So the first picture is what the whole process looks like. There's 3 of these processes it goes through. The one in the middle, if you look hard, you can see that the flock, it looks a lot smaller now. And then what they do is once they've processed all this stuff, their IP is around a piece of technology where they actually coat the plastics. So you can imagine there's all sorts of different plastics in this. And basically that's no use to anybody. But what they have is they coat the plastics with a material that tricks the plastics into thinking that they all have the same melt flow rate. And what that means is that they're able to use those into injection blow molds to make stuff afterwards, because all the plastic thinks it's the same. And they're able to produce these. So this is a company called Mauser. They're up in Stockport. They are taking the granules from Impact, who have taken the waste from Stericycle and SharkSmart, and those people have taken the waste from NHS. So actually producing plastic clinical waste bins from clinical waste. Brilliant. If I go back, you'll see there's an awful lot of blue in the right-hand picture. That's nitrile. And so one of the challenges that we've got at the moment is, can we separate the nitrile out? And if we can, what can we do with it? And we think we've found a process now, working with academia, to separate that nitrile out. And we think, having separated it out, we've got somebody that can take the nitrile back and turn it into more nitrile gloves for us. And that's the work that's going on in the background. So it's real and it's happening. And on top of all of that, my favourite subject, which is stopping waste in the first place, is the elimination. Alongside all of this, and I was on a call yesterday with the Design for Life team looking at the elimination of single-use products, or changing them from single-use to multiple use. And it's been quite an interesting journey. You can see the pink band there. That's a single-use tourniquet. And I only became aware of these last year when I was asked to write a parliamentary question response, which read something like this. Mrs. Very Angry from Cornwall was distraught to find that when she went to her doctor to give her bloods, that they used a single-use plastic tourniquet, and she was under the impression that the NHS had banned single-use plastics. Please answer, Liam. And I was like, wow. I didn't even realise single-use tourniquets were a thing. So working with my IPC colleagues, infection prevention control colleagues, found out just how many of these we've got. Zillions. And actually, if you look at it, it operates a little bit like a Apple Watch strap. So the clinicians don't really like them because they're either too tight or too loose. So we've got a product that we don't really like. And actually there's better alternatives, but we've now got zillions of these. So we're having to look at how we roll this back. So there's a number of groups looking at the moment in single-use items to see, can we roll it back? Are there other products that we can use? And that's one. Single-use curtains is another. And my favourite of all time is couch roll. When we started looking at couch roll, the task and finish group, we were asked, why are we using couch roll? Well, because IPC says it protects the couch. IPC? No, it doesn't. It doesn't do anything. And actually, if you have any bodily spills on the couch, you have to clean the couch anyway. Oh, and by the way, if the couch roll is attached to the head of the couch, that actually is an infection control risk. And so you can see there's a whole number of products that have been built on urban myth. And somebody asked me, why do we have all these single-use products, Liam? I said, because there's professional salesmen out there that will go and sell you all the stuff that you no longer need or want. Here's some figures for you. So, I suppose the bottom one is gloves. Is if you look at this, we're using 2 billion, I was to look at the number of zeros, 2 billion pairs of gloves a year. These numbers come from NHS supply chain, so the number's actually going to be larger because people can buy outside of that. To give you an idea of what that means is that we're spending the same buying surgical gloves as we do disposing of all of the clinical waste in England. It's about £80 million a year. And there are gloves off campaigns being run up and down the country, which we've seen a reduction between 15 and 55% in gloves when people have worked on gloves awareness programs. So there's another program. If you don't have a gloves aware program in your NHS trust, think about having one. There's plenty of case studies up and down the country showing you what people have done and how they've done it. And this has been sponsored by the Royal College of Nursing, so you should be pushing against an open door here. This is a small advert. I'm coming to the end now. Small advert. Last year we created, and I promised that when we delivered the HTM, that what we would do is I wanted it to have some how-to guides instead of just having a reference manual that nobody looks at is to have how-to guides. So the first one that we did was for nursing staff. So this is a 2-minute video. It's not training, it's awareness, and it actually walks people through that are on the front line that there are different waste streams and what to do, and if they're unsure, to speak to their waste or sustainability manager or to refer to HTMO 701. It's been unbelievably well received, so much so we're about to launch one for ambulances, and on the heels of that is one for community nurses as well. And we want to do this so we can actually, these are little 2-minute videos to say to people, this is something that we need you to think about in your busy day. Lastly, we're going to run the second year of the Excellence in Waste Management Awards. It's going to be in Leeds on October the 2nd at the Armouries, and it's a celebration of all the hard work that the waste managers have done up and down the country. Brilliant last year. The guy that won the Waste Managers Award came to me afterwards and said, Liam, I've been doing this for 15 years and nobody's ever recognised anything I've ever done. So if you're a waste manager, it'd be great to see you there. We're going to have some of the winners that are there from last year as a conference where you'll be able to talk and interact with them and talk about how they've done stuff. So hopefully we'll see you there. If you've got bids in and you've been shortlisted, best of luck, and it'll be a great night. That's me done.